on in.
Today I visit with historical educator Brent Bozarth of the Thespian Hall Performing Arts Center in Boonville, Missouri. I'm Rick J., and this is Spotlight on the Arts.
Rick J. presents Spotlight on the Arts.
Mr. Bozarth, welcome to About Town, the series. I'm truly excited to visit with you today at the Performing Arts Center. That's the Thespian Hall Performing Arts Center in Boonville, Missouri. I'm so happy to turn the spotlight on you today.
Thank you very much. And we have a lot to share, and welcome the opportunity. Thank you.
Super, super. Well, it's going to be a great show, so stay with us, everyone. Brent, if I may call you by your first name.
Absolutely.
Great. We have a lot to talk about, like you said, there at the Thespian Hall Performing Arts Center in Boonville, Missouri. So there's so much history in the city, and a lot of it you can run down for us, I guess, as far as the Thespian Hall Performing Arts Center, as it's, I guess, the Thespian, as it's called for short.
Yes.
Well, would you run down the history and various connections of the past and share with the people worldwide? Share, first of all, if you would, a little bit about Brent Bozarth.
Well, I am a native of Boonville. I was born and raised here. Spent basically my entire life here. I graduated from Warrensburg, College in Warrensburg. I am married, my wife Carolyn, and like I say, upon retirement, I became fascinated with the history of Thespian, and so I kind of followed that direction. When I retired, I basically came to help them with different projects. A lot of things, I kind of like to fix stuff. So a lot of the buildings that they have, mainly Thespian Hall here, needed repairs, so I started doing that. But a good friend of mine, which unfortunately passed away here in 2020 in February, Frank Thatcher, he was a real custodian as far as the history of Thespian Hall. And he got me involved in it, and I started doing tours, but I delved into the history of it too. And so I became he was the one that got me started on it, and I appreciated that, and I've just been trying to carry forward.
Excellent. So it's great that we have someone that knows the history of the Thespian, as we call it for short. It's great, and we have a lot to share. So, well, you have been the historical educator for the Thespian for 11 years, I understand.
Correct.
Can you share with us how you became inspired to become the spokesperson for the Thespian, just like the gentleman you spoke of earlier?
Well, yes, I mean, make a long story short, there weren't too many people that seemed interested in the history of Thespian.
I see.
I mean, they would like to come to performances here, they'd like to do this and that, but nobody was really focusing in on the history of what this building, where it started from and where it is now. Nobody seemed to really be interested in that.
I see.
So that's what got me started.
So you said it's time for me to try to do a job and get people more interested. And that's why we're here today worldwide. When you move to Missouri or visit Missouri from China or Brazil, I know we have viewers there and all over China, Japan, whatever. You might want to stop in and visit the historical city of Boonville. There's a lot of history here in the old city. We're going to cover some of that in the Civil War days. Also, we're close to Missouri River, just a few blocks that you can visit and watch the flow of river, which I kind of address it. I like the flow of life. It just kind of moves on and on. So there's a little bit of poetry, shall we say, with the river and the city, various cities throughout Missouri, as we discuss on About Town, and also Spotlight on the Arts. I came to you from a recommendation from one of our my interview persons, which was Jewel Cundiff, also known as Ed. I understand you went to school with him.
We did, all through high school and college.
Well, can you share with the viewers your mission then here at the Thespian?
Well, I mean,
and you have a group probably working with you.
Well, yeah, I am just a member of the Friends of Historic Boonville, which is the group that the nonprofit that owns these buildings.
Yes.
And it's been, it's been our goal to preserve the history in all three of our properties. But the main focus right now is on Thespian Hall. It's the one that brings in the most attractions. Other ones are open for tours and things like that, but this is where the real history lies in this property. And so whatever we can do to promote it, and a lot of it is just getting people in this building. It's surprising that there's lots of people, I say lots, but there's a great number of people here in Boonville that have never been in this building.
I could imagine. Now it seats 597 people, as you see behind us. So we're going to hopefully be able to educate the people through the programs and on the different platforms of GIJ and also YouTube. So that'll be great. Now, if you can, we're going to take a little bit of a tour. I'm going to show you the lighting effect, a little bit of footage on the property as you saw as I walked in, inviting you to join me as we followed Mr. Bozarth into the stage area. And so that'll be interesting. So stick with us. Well, so if you can go back to when did this all start?
The concept of Thespian Hall started like in 1838. There was 60 local citizens, and they called themselves the Thespians. They would meet around town. They would do plays. They would do readings. They would have them in log cabins. They would have them at somebody's store. They would have them wherever. So in 1855, they bought this lot that Thespian's on now for $500. And that's when Thespian, they started construction in July the 25th of 1855, and the building officially opened in July the 3rd of 1857. So when we look at the building here from time to time, it's gone through several stages. The original building probably not in the camera view, but the original building ended just to our right, where the columns are, and that was where the original building ended. The buildings, further on where we're sitting now, the stage area, was added in 1901. So there's been a lot of changes in this building. When it was originally built, everything that you see right now, the floors were not sloped. There was 3 floors. There was a basement underneath the original building, which housed what they call the Boonville Reading Room, which was basically the library
I see.
for the city.
Oh.
The second floor, or the floor that we're on now, that's where the Thespians did their plays, and they did their readings or their gymnastics or whatever they were performing. And then there's a second floor above that that housed the City of Boonville offices, as well as the service groups, the Odd Fellows and the Masons. They occupied that third floor. Basically, that's what paid for some of the bills.
Yes, electricity back in the 1870s.
Right. So that's how the original building started. Of course, there's so much to show, but the major changes, of course, wasn't too long after the building opened in 1857 that 4 years later the Civil War broke out. And in Boonville, during those years, there were 2 minor scrimmages here in Boonville. They weren't all that noteworthy, but they did occur. But basically, when they used Thespian, the basement, they kind of used that as a stable and an armory, and for a while, both sides used it off and on. But later, this building became a Union hospital. Yeah, and it served for several years in that capacity until the war ended in 1865. So, but at the end of that, since they had taken the building over completely, the building was in bad repair.
I bet.
It was not in good shape, and so they were scrambling, trying to get it going again. And finally, in the late 1860s, early 1870s, the original Thespian group disbanded.
I see.
And they deeded the building over to one of their founders, which was J.L. Stevens. And he was one of the original founders, like I said. And then he tried to get groups in here to keep things going, but it just got to a point, it struggled for years with different groups with the repairs, and so finally they just said, we're done, we're walking out. And so at that time, J.L. Stevens deeded the property to his 2 sons, W. Speed Stevens and Lon Vest Stevens. And at that time, we're talking now, we're in 1889, and at that time, Lon Vest Stevens was the governor of the state of Missouri.
I see.
Okay, and W. Speed, his brother, he was kind of the finance guy. So they decided, and I say Lon Stevens was governor from 1897 to 1901. Okay, so they contracted a theater contractor out of St. Louis to add a stage house, and that's when all the major renovations here at Thespian took place. There was a basement built under the stage where we're at now. The stage house was built. The balcony behind us was put in. The box seats were put in. There was an orchestra pit put in, and the floor was slanted, so like it is now. And so then they started kind of an up front lobby area. That was kind of started at that same time. So all the major renovations happened between 1898 and 1901. In 1901, when it reopened, it was renamed at that time. It was renamed Stevens Opera House. And so that was the official name. And from that point on, it brought in a whole new segment of people that hadn't been here before. At that time, Highway 40, which is right out in front of the building here, was the main thoroughfare between Kansas City and St. Louis.
Is that Main Street?
Main Street, what we would call Main Street now,
Right.
was Highway 40. And that was, Interstate 70 wasn't put in until the early 60s. So they brought a lot of people that did performances in Kansas City and St. Louis. They had people in that era, Ethel Barrymore, the Foys, even Blind Boone, a performer during that time, frequented here all the time, plus other vaudeville acts came through here all the time.
So this is the 1900s.
This is the
1900s.
So it was, that continued on for quite some time, but then when it got to about 1912, that's when they started saying, coming around the Nickelodeon era.
Oh, I see.
And so they changed over where they could show their first silent movie was shown here in 1912. And of course you would have a piano accompaniment on the stage that would play music that fitted the action on the stage. Of course these were all
Charlie Chaplin.
yeah, these were all silent movies.
Yeah.
And so so they pretty well, they would still do some vaudeville acts, they would still do some plays, but then in 1915 they actually changed the name again from Stevens Opera House to the Lyric Theater. So that's when it became more strictly movies. And in fact, it went on like that. The first talking movie was held here in 1925. It was a movie called The Jazz Singer.
The Jazz
And
Singer.
it's been redone several times since then, but that was the original talking movie that was here at that time. And then skip forward 4 years, Fox Midwest in 1929 bought the theater from the Stevens. But they kept the name Lyric Theater.
I see.
And it stayed the Lyric Theater until 1974 when Fox left, and then after that we get into that. But after that, it turned back into Thespian Hall. But the thing about this building that we hadn't talked about, this is the oldest active theater west of the Alleghenies that still does productions and still does what it does.
Yes.
And also another thing about this is this building was almost torn down 3 times. I mean, the first time, which we kind of touched on, was in the late 1880s when the building was in such bad repair. They were thinking about just tearing it down then until the renovation came in. Then the next time was in 1936. Fox Midwest wanted to tear it down and build a more modern structure. So a local historian, Charles Van Ravensway, and his committee, and one of his committee members was Bertha Hitch, was the wife of Colonel Hitch, which was the commander at Kipper Military School. He was one of the
Which
early,
is close to Columbia.
was a preservation campaign, and they raised the money. In 1938, they did the repairs, and the theater stayed the way it was until 1974.
I see.
And in 1974, again, it was in horrible shape, and that's when the Kemper Foundation out of Kansas City, which is now called UMB Bank,
Yes.
they came in, bought the building, and gave it to the Friends of Historic Boonville.
Yes. Now, is it on the registry as
Yes,
a historical site?
It went on the historical registry in 1969.
1969.
And the funny thing is about Crosby Kemperwood, he was a big MU fan, so they would travel from Kansas City to Columbia. He was a football, basketball fan,
Yes.
and his son, he told him later on, he said they would go by this building all the time.
Yes.
And he said if that building would ever become available, that's something we should like to help with. So they did. The son came in, purchased the building, like I said, and gave it to the Friends of Historic Boonville, along with a sizable cash donation to do needed repairs.
Excellent.
And so the one stipulation that he had was that they wanted to see one festival a year held in this building. So this year we're getting ready to celebrate our 48th annual Missouri River Festival of the Arts.
Yes.
And so that has changed over the years. But right now, this last 19 years, I'm sure many have heard, maybe not, but the the concert master of the St. Louis Symphony, David Halen, puts on the festival. He brings in talent from all over. I mean, we had the St. Louis Symphonies here, members, the Kansas City Symphonies.
Yes.
We've had.
Well, if I may,
Sure.
Brent, we're going to talk a lot about that after the break.
Right.
And how does people get a hold of you or find out what's going on?
Good contact would be, you can go on the website. It's www.friendsofhistoricboonville Missouri, or MO.org, and it's all lowercase.
Super. We'll put that on the timeline.
Yeah.
So people can see it. Excellent. Well, John, Bert, it's time for a quick break. So please make yourself comfortable while we look at a couple of special messages. After the break, Brent will take us on somewhat of a tour and talk about the future of the Thespian Hall. So stay with us. There's a lot more to come here on Spotlight in the Arts.
Creative, connection, control. Support the arts and be the change. 24 hours a day, 200 countries. The show must go on. Introducing the world's first exclusive platform for artists and creators of all kinds. The biggest stage on earth.
Stream Spotlight on the Arts on fanforme.com. Stream Spotlight on the Arts on GIAJ Global Media OTT Network. Google us or find us on Roku, Amazon Fire.tv, or Apple.tv.
Hi, I'm Rick J. And I'm Jeffrey Purnell, and we're here to introduce you to GIAJ Global Media OTT Network. Hope you'll tune in. Tune in and watch all the great shows by independent producers, music, and film, and podcasts. Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and or Google us on GIAJ Global Media Network. It's a free download now. Thank you.
Welcome back to Spotlight in the Arts. I continue with my special guest, Brent Bozarth of the Thespian Performing Arts Center here in Boonville, Missouri. Well, Brent, we promised everyone a tour of this magnificent historical place, so I'll follow your lead.
Well, I'm more than happy to show you around. I think it'd be very interesting for a lot of people to see. Welcome to the tour of Thespian Hall. We will start with showing you some of the highlights of this great building. So let's get started. First of all, you will notice as you look up the lighting and things. To keep this theater in the historical perspective, we still have to use the sandbags and pulleys and things to work the curtains and do the lighting. All has to be done manually. And as you can see, this nice ladder, this is the way you have to access to get to the catwalk to lower the curtains and the light bars and everything like that. So it's still pretty much a hands-on operation when you do things. When this part of the building was built and opened in 1901, the stage house was built. They put a basement underneath the stage house, and we can kind of go down and take a look at the basement. Now, as you can see down here, all of this construction in this basement was everything was built out of limestone. The interesting part about this, as we talked about earlier, when they did the big renovation in 1901, they sloped the floors out front. So the Civil War basement, most of it disappeared as they sloped the floor. You can see here on these beams and things, when they sloped the floor, they repurposed the beams out of the old Civil War basement because they were lowering the floor. They didn't need the height anymore. So you can see the massive beams, and these are all made out of walnut. At the same time they did this stage house, they also put in an orchestra pit. All of this can be removed, and the orchestra pit can be restored. Everything is still intact. It's kind of hard to see, but over here at the side, you have entrances on both sides where you can walk down into the orchestra pit from either side of the stage. And then on the other side of this wall, that would have been on the other side of this wall would have been, well, still is the old Civil War basement, but it's not near the size that it was, near the height that it was due to sloping the floors upstairs. During the Civil War, it had several purposes. It worked as a prison, it worked as an armory, but it also it even worked as a stable. But that was the main part of the building. The second and third floors were actually used for a hospital. So anyway, during that time it was quite, the basement was used mainly for, like I said, storage, armory, prison, a jail, whatever they were using it. Like I said, this part we're standing in now wasn't here then. It didn't come along until 1901, but so on the other side of the wall here, that's where the Civil War basement was. Now we can go back upstairs and view some other interesting places in this building. Rick, one thing you can see here, you can look here along this back wall and you can see where there were windows and doors that have been blocked in. When the stage house was built, this back wall was the end of the building. That's where the renovation ended and when it opened in 1901. And over the years, bathrooms have been added back here, dressing rooms for the artists have been added. So this came along later in probably in the 1940s. Upstairs is just a duplicate of what's down here. Dressing rooms upstairs that you access through these steps right here to get up there, so it's just a duplicate of what's down here. Now, as we came up the stairs, this room that you see here is the sitting room before you go into the balcony area and the projection booth area. These furnishings were donated by Mildred Wilcox Durr. This came out of their parlor and living area, and they donated them to the Friends of Historic Boonville, which sure graces this area. And also gives you something to talk about this that's part of local history. And now we can proceed into the balcony area and the projection booth. Okay, now we'll proceed into the projection room. As I told you earlier, there was a surprise up here. In 1974, when Fox Midwest closed this building and left, in this projection booth, they left all the original equipment in there. The machines, the film splicers, tubes, whatever. They just walked out and left it all here. What you'll be amazed by is, up until that time, how they were shooting movies compared to what the new modern equipment looks like. So as you'll follow me, we'll go in and take a look. Now these machines have a 1938 patent date on them. I don't know if they're that old or not, but they do have some age on them. Of course, back in that time, most everything they had double features, so these machines got quite a workout. So if one film was too long for the reel, then they had to switch it to the other machine, and then switch them back and forth for the second feature. So, and the heat that these machines put off was unbelievable. They were actually fired up with like arc welders that put the heat out on these machines. And I know you can kind of see part of the ventilation system where they tried to take off some of the heat, but I know from my time being up here, when the movies were being shown, a friend of mine ran the equipment. It was unbearably hot up here. Just to have this piece of history up here and have it preserved is something that we're glad to have.
Well, Brent, that was a great tour. I guess we should tell people now. I'm kind of excited about the future. What is happening? What's planning now in the plans for the future of the Thespian Hall Performing Arts Center, or known as the Thespian?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Coming up, our next big event here is coming up in August 24th through the 26th.
That's 2023.
2023 is the 48th annual Festival of the Arts, and this year it will feature what it is a classical music. It's a 3-day concert.
Oh, 3-day concert.
Yeah, it's a 3-day concert, and it brings in world-class musicians. I mean, we're talking musicians from the St. Louis Symphony, Kansas City. We've had singers from the Metropolitan out of New York. We've had, all over. And this is all put on by David Halen. He has been doing this for the Friends for the last 19 years. And he is the concert master for the St. Louis Symphony.
Oh, I see. David Halen.
David Halen, yes. And they just put on a magnificent show, and it's just something.
So Brent wants to invite you. That's coming up soon, the next month, to give us a timeline here at the Thespian, Boonville, Missouri.
Tickets are on sale now. You can get them at the website that I gave you earlier. You can go online and you can buy tickets, or you can.
That's a one-night event or
3 nights.
3 nights.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
So you can come and fill one of those 597 seats behind us. So super, super. Well, anything else? You have a spring festival in 2024, I understand.
Oh yeah, I mean we've got another festival that we do in April, and that's what they call the Big Muddy. It's a folk festival, and it's a 2-day festival, and it's been going on for numerous years, 20-something years.
Oh my!
So it's been an established festival also, and then we still do lots of other things. We've had different groups in from time to time to put on performances. We do lots of things to keep the building active.
Yes.
A lot of state band competitions are held in here.
Oh,
They do schools put on plays, and we have the local dance studio, Turning Point Dance Studio. She comes in for a week, and she has like 160 kids.
Oh, wow.
And they, from beginners to advanced, and I mean, it's quite a show that they put on. Well, thanks for joining us on the tour. Please keep us in mind with upcoming events and everything that's going on here. We would love to have you here in this magnificent hall. So please be in contact with us. And thank you so much for joining us.
Rick J presents Spotlight on the Arts.